everybody, to Inside Boxing Daily on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Inside Boxing Daily is brought to you by BetNow.eu to get up to a 50% cashback bonus on your first deposit up to $1,000. Make sure you go to BetNow.eu and hit the promo code TRUTH50, TRUTH50. You can also go hit the banner on the top of the GruelingTruth.com page to get that discount or bonus also. We are also brought to you, as always, by our friends at the Retired Boxers Foundation, Jackie Richardson and Alex Ramos. Make sure you check them out on Facebook, and Seat Giant, where you use a promo code TGT to get 5% back on your ticket purchases. I am your co-host for Inside Boxing Daily, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, Jeremiah Preisser. How you doing, Jeremiah?
I'm always good, man. Always excited to talk boxing, especially during the weeknight. So, yeah, let's go.
I know, especially when we get all this great stuff to talk about. We're going to start off with some rumors. Callum Smith versus Canelo Alvarez, possible for December or sooner. And this comes from his trainer, Joe Gallagher. Canelo will be fighting on September 14th. The leading candidates are Golovkin and, I guess, Andrade. I think he's got to fight Golovkin with that contract they've got, Jeremiah. But Callum Smith's promoter told Gallagher the WBA regular super middleweight champion Canelo Alvarez could be moving back up to 168 to face Callum in December. What's your take on this?
Well, I mean, nothing in boxing surprises me. So if it did come off, I would be surprised. I can't say nothing surprises me in boxing.
I think it's a dangerous fight for Canelo.
Yeah, I think it is too. I mean, Callum Smith's a big guy. He's got, long levers and, technically he's pretty good. He goes to the body pretty well. I mean, it's certainly a tough styles matchup for him, but I still have a tendency to think like you, where, I think because of the contracts here, you think Golovkin is going to get the fight, but, if Canelo is really feeling vindictive and he doesn't want Golovkin to, get that shot, that he really wants to put it off, I mean, Callum Smith is the next best option, really. I mean, we're talking about the number one 168-pounder in the world. He's proven his worth in the WBSS. And, him being from England, it makes some sense that would sell pretty well. It's not going to do as big a numbers as the Golovkin fight, but I think when you're examining the landscape at 160, 168, Callum Smith is definitely up there in terms of big sells. So, it might hurt the pocketbook, but it's not going to hurt the pocketbook that much. And I don't know, I don't know what's going on behind the doors. If they're making any progress and whatnot, because it hasn't been announced yet. So it seems like there's some sort of roadblock in the way, for making the trilogy. But I don't know, man. I still think that Golovkin's going to get that fight. And I also think, like I was talking about earlier, that it's a tough fight if it comes off. Smith is a big guy. I mean, he's not only is he a good body puncher and he's got long arms and good size. I mean, if all these divisions did not exist, Callum Smith would easily fit into the 175-pound division. He's a big dude. But I don't know. It's just I have a hard time thinking that that's the one that's going to come off, especially with DAZN wanting these guys to justify their contracts. But I suppose Canelo Alvarez could get Callum Smith in the winter, and then maybe because they have Demetrius Andrade under their wing as well, maybe they put him against Golovkin. I suppose it's possible.
How about this? You know who the top two contenders in the WBA rankings at 168 are?
Oh, God, probably, I don't know, Rob Brandt, and I don't know.
Number one is John Ryder, and number two is Chris Eubank Jr.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, God.
Could you imagine if, they just vacate it and have those two fight for the title?
Please, I don't want to. Honestly, I don't. Actually, I don't want to imagine that for a title. If they fought if they fought each other without a title, I'd be all for that because I think Ryder and Chris Eubank Jr. is an interesting styles matchup. Ryder looked damn good in his last outing, and Chris Eubank looked pretty crappy against George Groves, but he's had some spots where he's looked okay. Stylistically, I think that'd be fun, but yeah, I don't want to see that at all. And whoever would win that fight is going to be a top target for any of the top dogs at middleweight.
All right, we have a comment from Kalate. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And if I'm not, you know who you are. Callum Smith is big for the 68 division. Canelo is a small middleweight. Plus, Callum can box, has power and reach at a full 6'3". This would be a risky fight for Canelo. I think I like the Andrade fight better, who is a big dude himself, but not quite as big as Smith, and can unify, which would be huge. Number one, before I let Jeremiah attack this, it would not be huge because Canelo is the middleweight champion. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if I would agree that Canelo is a small middleweight. I mean, I think physically he's filled into the division pretty nicely.
Yeah, he would be a small super middleweight. I'll give you that.
Yeah, well, and my thing too, well, because, yeah, he didn't look, when you saw him fight Rocky Fielding, he didn't look as big as Fielding. You could see that there was a size disparity there. But I think Canelo's fit into the 160-pound division pretty good. In fact, I felt that Canelo was physically a middleweight for a long time because, we talk about Golovkin being there and some of the post-fight weigh-ins that he had. I mean, actually, Canelo Alvarez was weighing more going into the ring than Golovkin was for years and years now. I think Canelo was, 174 against Austin Trout. As we talked about before, Kermit Cintrone had fought him, and Cintrone was under the impression that Alvarez was clearly 180 plus. That was a while before he really got into the big time, when it was fighting. I think that was a few years before Mayweather. So I think Alvarez is just fine at middleweight. I think, physically he's good. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there's a big size disparity and, that works to count in his favor, but I also think there's a skills disparity, and I think that's in favor of Canelo Alvarez. I would actually favor Canelo Alvarez if he fought Callum Smith, just because I what I see at Callum Smith is he's a good fighter, but I'm just not quite convinced that he's an elite level operator. I'm not even sure he's the best 168 pounder in the world yet. I'd like to see him fight, David Benavidez or somebody or Caleb Plant and kind of solidify his position and, become the man there. But to me, Alvarez he's a better fighter. And I don't know, with the size disparity, I'm just not quite convinced that Callum Smith would get it done there.
All right, we have a comment from Derek, who we haven't heard from in a month or two. He says, Canelo is not fighting Callum Smith. End of story. I believe there's no way this happens in December, especially if Canelo was to fight Triple G. It's one thing to fight Triple G in September and fight Rocky Fielding in December. I think it's another thing entirely different to fight Callum Smith.
Well, yeah, and my thing is, why would they fight Callum Smith in December anyways? I mean, it seems as if Canelo Alvarez has taken over the 2 days that are basically big boxing holidays now, in Cinco de Mayo and Mexican Independence Day. So I don't even know why they wouldn't shoot for that. So I'm not exactly sure, who's throwing these dates out there or what, but it just seems like it would make a lot more sense to do it around Mexican Independence weekend, unless for some crazy reason, which I would really, really like. I mean, if Canelo Alvarez took on Golovkin and then took on Callum Smith in December, sort of like he did last year, but Rocky Fielding, I mean, that would be highly impressive. I think Derek is right. I just think that Golovkin is probably the name we're going to get, and I'm perfectly fine with that. It's arguably the biggest fight in boxing, and at least Golovkin, even at this age, is going to push Alvarez and make it funner than Dano Jacobs did, or most of these other guys will.
All right, here you go. I've got a scary story for you. Do you want to hear a scary story since it's late at night?
Oh, dude, let's go.
All right. Amir King Khan says that he has an agreement from WBA regular welterweight champion Manny Pacquiao for the two of them to fight each other on November 9th of this year in Saudi Arabia if they both win their next fights.
Ah, Jesus. You can't verbal agreements. There's quotation marks, by the way. I mean, he's been chasing a big fight with Pacquiao or Mayweather for years and years now, and I honestly think that it's possible he could get Pacquiao. I mean, I don't believe it. I just think it's possible, if only because if Pacquiao loses against Keith Thurman,
Well, they're
you know,
talking
and
about
Khan
if they
is
both
having his little.
win. He said that they're going to fight.
Well, Khan better win. I mean, isn't he in some exhibition against a guy who, you know, is nowhere near his level even at this stage? Here's my thing: is even if Pacquiao loses, even if he gets blown out in the first round, Amir Khan is not going to throw away a payday against. Amir Khan's not going to throw away a payday against Manny Pacquiao. And at this stage, I mean, if Pacquiao gets knocked out or, you know, loses clearly, Amir Khan is a fine choice, honestly. I mean, you know, them and Brook, like guys who are just past it, but, you know, still hold some weight in terms of the box office. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. I mean, I don't think it is. I mean, you know, with the way events have been lately, I mean, again, Amir Khan has been talking about getting one of these big fighters for years and years now, and he hasn't. I mean, he hasn't even been able to secure a big domestic showdown with Kell Brook. So, you know, what's to lead me to believe that he'll necessarily get Pacquiao? But still, I wouldn't be surprised if Pacquiao loses and he gets this, because if he wins, it just seems like he's going to stay on the PBC track and probably get the winner of Errol Spence and Sean Porter. But
yeah, he's breaking the bank if he wins that fight. He's not fighting Amir Khan.
Yeah, but I do think if he loses, I do think that is a possibility.
All right, next up, here's another scary one. Adrian Broner could be back, as him and Lee Selby are supposedly in negotiations for a fight in the fall. This is according to Mike Coppinger, and I don't know what to think of this. I don't know what weight they would fight at. For it to be fair for Selby, I would think it would have to be at 140, because I think 147 is probably too much weight for him to come up. But my big question is here, when will Adrian Broner just go away?
Go away. Jesus, man. Yeah, it's honestly, maybe he should just, you know, get into bare knuckle boxing and fight Paulie in a rematch or something. I mean, that strikes me as being more interesting than Lee Selby. Lee Selby was a good featherweight, but, you know, I mean, imagine what he would do at 140, because I haven't seen what weight it's supposed to be contracted at, but you would only assume that it's going to be at 140 pounds because he can still make that weight. And Lee Selby said he was going to move up to 135 because he could no longer make 126. So Lee Selby couldn't punch for dick at 126. He sure as hell ain't going to punch for dick at 140. And I mean, unless he goes the Paulie Malignaggi route and he just, you know, keeps moving his hands, I don't know. This just seems kind of like a mismatch to me, even at this stage. Broner's just well equipped at the weight. Selby is not. I mean, if he gets on his bicycle and jabs, I mean, I think he can last a while, but it's just a bad styles matchup and not one that I find particularly interesting. I don't know, man. It's just not a good fight. It's not a fun fight. I do understand I did see some people comment on this fight, though, and they're like, oh, well, you know, Adrian Broner's had it tough lately. You know, let him have a softer one. I don't mind that either, honestly.
I mind
Adrian Broner is not
I mind it because you know what happens? He gets the softer winner. Next thing you know, we're watching him fighting Terrence Crawford or Errol Spence.
Yeah, well, yeah. Next thing we know, we're you know, the Al Heyman and the WBA are doing him a favor and, you know, getting him some alphabet trinket at 140 pounds or something. I mean, who knows? I mean, you know, well, I don't think that would happen. I was trying to think, like, who could he fight at 140? You know, where it would make some, like, where he could squeeze in, and I suppose. He could fight, I don't know, maybe the winner of Maurice Hooker and Jose Ramirez. Maybe, I don't know, but I don't want to see any of that. I mean, he's not deserving of a title shot. He's been getting too many paydays as it is. His attitude sucks. And I'm like you, man. I'm just kind of over it. So to me, this fight isn't that important, but stylistically, it's just not that fun.
Yeah, it used to be fun to watch him get beat, but now I don't even look forward to that anymore. All right, here's another scary one. This is a night of frights instead of fights. Hughie Fury I was going to bring this up last night. I forgot all about it because I think you tweeted something or Facebook something about this. And Hughie Fury will be facing former WBC heavyweight champion, who knew, Samuel Peter, in a 10-round fight on the undercard of Amir Khan against Niraj Goyat, whatever the hell that is, next month on July 12th in Saudi Arabia. That sounds pretty exciting. You got Sam Peter, who's probably, I don't know, you think Sam Peter might be a little bit over the hill?
No, I think he's just about to reach his peak.
Okay. But yeah. Fury's ranked 14th by the IBF, which, of course, that's because he's the cousin of Tyson Fury. Hasn't done much in his career. Would he lose a 12-round majority decision to Joseph Parker? I think he also lost to Kubrat Pulev, didn't he, by a unanimous decision? And the article says that Sam Peter has been struggling. He's lost 2 of his last 4 fights since 2016. And it doesn't look like he is the same powerful Nigerian that he was when he came close to beating Vladimir Klitschko in 2005.
Oh, yeah. What an astute observation, isn't it? I mean, yeah, you think that he's not near his best? I mean, Jesus, this dude is...
I use like
didn't
5
he go on a
different
hiatus?
places to find my boxing news. And always, without fail, the worst fucking website for boxing news has to be Boxing News 24.
Yeah, they've got some shit writers there. I think the forums are good, but the news and the writers, I don't know how they find this bunch. I was rereading Aragon Garcia's article today before we came on the show just to see how fucking stupid it was. And it's like something you would post on a personal blog. It's just a bunch of bullcrap opinion. And it's like things like, as a journalist, you're supposed to have some objectivity, Instead, he's saying like, Golovkin brings nothing. The payday isn't going to be much more than guys like Demetrius. I mean, and you got guys like that filling up the airwaves over there all the time, every day. It sucks, man. And yeah, it's like when you're saying, oh, okay, well, yeah, he probably doesn't have. He doesn't. Sam Peter went out. Didn't he retire and go to Nigeria, for like 4 years, and then
I think
and now he's just
went to Nigeria, and I think he was the lead in the musical Cats in Nigeria.
Well, no, I actually think he was the guy sending out all those emails, because I think he's a prince. I think he's a prince back there, and he was sending out emails. Nobody was responding, so now he's just about broke.
I'll tell
and
you. Did I tell you that I get to split $5 million with a banker who knew somebody in Nigeria that is related to me? All I got to do is send him my Social Security number and like $10,000. And within a month, I'll have half of $5 million, and I'm splitting it with him. And I thought that was pretty nice of him to give me half that money.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. I mean, you're in a jiffy. You got to get back to that guy and go collect your dough, man. I mean, yeah. I don't know if Sam Peter has anything to do with that. I think it's probably this stuff. Like nobody's responding to his emails, so he's got to do something. I mean, all he knows how to do is fight and send emails, and he's stuck now. So I don't know, man. You got to get on it.
Yeah, and we get a comment from Mickey M-I-K-I, who says Samuel Peter is only 38. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's what I think when I look at Luis Ortiz and Guillermo Rigondeaux. I mean,
Luis Ortiz is like 147, as Tyson Fury said. Rigondeaux's 57. So the thing about it is this. If Luis Ortiz ever wins a title, it'll probably be the AARP belt, which he could beat Samuel Peter to win.
Yeah, could you imagine if Luis Ortiz beats Deontay Wilder and Sam Peter beats Fury, and then that's a
Peter
his
can
first
fight
defense.
Ortiz.
Yeah, that's his first defense. God, what a world that would be, huh? Well, I mean, in the state of the heavyweight division, you never know. I mean, it's possible. But yeah, it's funny because Rick Glazer told he said this, and I brought this up before. But he said that he's talked to a Cuban amateur coach, and he's like, nah, Rigondeaux is really 43, and Luis Ortiz is like really 48. And I believe it, man. I mean,
Ortiz especially.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough to Rigondeaux's a bit tougher to believe just because it's hard as hell to be relevant at 30 years old at that weight, let alone 43. But then again, he is extremely skilled. But yeah, I mean, Ortiz looks like he's the grandfather of a few children, and he probably is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, man. Sam Peter.
Wait a second. Wait a second.
What?
What's wrong with being the grandfather of a few children? I'm a grandfather of what'll be 2, and I'm only 50. Well, I guess that means he's 48, probably.
That's my point. My point. I don't have anything against grandfathers or grandmothers. I'm just saying, Luis Ortiz is probably a grandfather right now, and that 48 that Rick Laser says he is makes a lot of sense. But yeah, Sam Peter being 38. Yeah, I don't know, man. It might be another Luis Ortiz situation where he's probably older than he indicates. Either way, I would have a hard time believing that he's going to get through this Fury fight. Even seeing the distance, even going the distance as slap happy as Fury gets.
All right, and if you guys have any comments, make sure you go to the Grueling Truth at Grueling Truth on Twitter. You can direct messages there, or you can just tweet something out if you want. All right, Jeremiah, are we missing any news? Or are we ready for On This Day? And we got 2 On This Days, because I want to add that Leonard one, too.
Okay. So, yeah, then we'll just go with that, because, we'll just start with those.
If you got nothing else, though, we're going to take a quick 15-second commercial break, and we'll be back right after this.
Join BetNow.eu, courtesy of the Grueling Truth Sports Network, and get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit up to $1,000. Just use the promo code TRUTH50. That's promo code TRUTH50.
All right, guys, we are back on the Grueling Truth Sports Network with Inside Boxing Daily. I'm Mike Goodpaster with Jeremiah Preisser. Jeremiah, on this day, you want to start off with a little Sugar Ray Leonard? Or nah, let's go with Sugar Ray Robinson, and then we'll go to Leonard.
I mean, yeah. Okay. So 2 Sugar Rays today, huh? Yeah. Okay. So I guess it's Sugar Ray Tuesday.
Sugar Ray Tuesday. We can make that the title on the show for people to listen to.
There we go. That actually has a kind of a cool ring to it. But yeah, the On This Day is a well-known fight. It is Joey Maxim defending his title for the second time against Sugar Ray Robinson. This was obviously Ray Robinson's attempt to win the crown. And he was actually a slight betting favorite going in, which tells you just how highly that Robinson was thought of. I don't have the weights, but if I'm not mistaken, okay, yeah. So Robinson was 157 and Maxim was 173. I mean, you would have a lot of uproar if you had 2 guys enter, step on the scales that way today. But it shows you, I mean, a lot of time, and it is a bit different nowadays because, you don't have the day of weigh-ins. But Robinson came in as a middleweight, Maxim came in as light heavyweight. But as you see with the scorecards, Robinson was up. I think he was. I know AP had him up. I mean, it was something like, 10-3 or something?
He was winning the fight easily. From what I've seen on film.
Clearly.
I mean, Robinson was a far superior fighter, so the 18 pounds didn't matter. The thing that stands out, though, is if you watch this fight or you've read about this fight, I think that, if I remember right, the referee actually had to be replaced in like the 10th or 11th round because he got sick because of the heat. They estimated that under the lights it was somewhere between 105 and 110, and there was multiple people in the crowd that had passed out from the weather also. And when you watch this fight, the thing that stands out to me, if Robinson would have just toned it down a little bit and taken his time, he would have easily won this fight 12-3. But I think he was a showman. He was really flashy. He liked to show people what he could do. And he threw a ton of sharp combinations, a lot of dancing. And instead of conserving his energy and setting a pace to his advantage, I think that he just kind of overdid things here instead of pacing himself. I think if he paces himself, he easily wins the fight.
Yeah, I know, and that's what's impressive about the whole thing, right? It's that, I mean, I know Joey Maxim's people are of, a different opinion. They felt that, Joey Maxim was catching up to him anyways, And actually, they did say that it was part of their plan. Of course, it's hard to know truth
everybody's plan when they're going
right. I know it's always hard to separate truth from fiction when you don't really know. Like, you're not in the guy's training camp, but yeah, but that's what they said. They were like, yeah, we intended for Ray Robinson to tire himself out. And I suppose that could be kind of hard to follow, because you're like, okay, so you're going to let the smaller man tire himself out? I mean, naturally, a smaller guy is going to have better stamina because he doesn't have as much weight to lug around. And we're also talking about a guy who's been 15 rounds, previously. So, yeah, on the face of it, it does kind of sound like BS, like you're going to let Robinson. I mean, if anybody knew how to pace himself, you would think that it'd be Ray Robinson. But yeah, Ray Robinson was just he did what he always does. And again, I think his jab is just one of the most underrated weapons in boxing history. It's like every time I look at the forums and these boxing groups or Twitter or something, and they're like, who had the greatest jab of all time? I think Ray Robinson clearly had one of the best jabs of all time. I mean, he worked behind it nicely. It was sharp. He could double it, triple it, went to the body, went to the head. And, that was one of the big factors in this fight as well. He was just neutralizing Joey Maxim, who was a good fighter, but, wasn't a big puncher. I mean, it was just a damn good performance. And it's funny because when a lot of people talk about it as well, the emphasis seems to be on Robinson not making the final bell, but not enough emphasis on the fact that he was actually winning the fight clearly up until he actually collapsed. So yeah, I think you're right, man. I think if he just tones it down just a little bit, takes it easy, just puts it in third gear, I still think he wins the fight. He goes 15 rounds. He's a light heavyweight champion of the world. I mean, and imagine what his legacy would be had he won the light heavyweight championship of the world. I mean, because I've talked about this before, but he was refused. I don't know if that's the right word. That's why I'm struggling here. I can't remember the exact details, but he was not permitted to fight for Sammy Engot's lightweight title. They had an over the weight encounter, I think, at like 138 pounds. So Robinson could have been the lightweight champion of the world, the welterweight champion of the world, the middleweight champion of the world, and the light heavyweight champion of the world. I mean, could you the distance of 40 pounds that he's covering back then? I mean, it would have been unprecedented. I mean, we talk about Roberto Duran not long ago and how he was competitive against Marvin Hagler. I mean, we're talking about a guy in Robinson who started out at lightweight and could have been the lightweight and could have been the light heavyweight champion of the world. I mean, that's incredible. And I actually heard, because I think I looked at some newspaper clippings too, is that Archie Moore was being talked about as an opponent had Ray Robinson won. And I think I would have favored Archie Moore there. But what a fantastic contest that would have been.
All right, and the interesting thing before we wrap it up is I remember reading about this fight, and Robinson was so delirious. He lost like 15 to 20 pounds during the fight. Maxim lost 10, and I guess they put him in a cold shower, and I know a lot of people think that may have saved his life because he was so delirious. He was in the shower screaming, "I'm not crazy. You may think I am, but God beat me tonight." So he wasn't in his right mind. He was delirious, and, but he showed how great a fighter he was that night. Let's talk a little bit about Sugar Ray Leonard and Ayub Kalule. And I think the important thing here is we also bring up that on that card was Thomas Hearns against Pablo Baez. So.
Oh, snap. I actually thought I saw yesterday that, who was it, Donald Curry? Or did we talk about that? Donald Curry fought Pablo Baez as well? I mean, man, that guy got around. I don't even care about Ray Leonard anymore. I just want to talk about Pablo Baez. But no, I actually watched a few, like 4 rounds of this fight because I had never seen it. I got in 4 rounds before we came on, 1 through 3, and then round 9. And this was 4. Yeah, he was a pretty good fighter. Actually, one thing that struck me as a bit weird here, and I know it's just minor, but Kalule's gloves were so wide compared to Sugar Ray Leonard's. It's like these things were the same color. They look like they were the same brand, but for some goofy reason, Kalule's gloves were just so much wider. Like Leonard's gloves were like tighter. They were rounder. They were more compact. I don't know, man. Maybe it's stupid, but it just struck me as odd, like the difference in the way that the gloves looked. But yeah, I mean, it looked like. And actually, when I was watching this fight too, I thought Marvin Hagler was a ringside commentator, and he actually did a pretty damn good job. I mean, I thought he said some things that were pretty spot on. He said that Leonard didn't look quite as fast as he usually did, and to me, he did. He did not look as sharp as I had seen him previously, like, just a fight or two beforehand. I don't know, he seemed like he was breathing a little bit heavier earlier. I don't know, he just didn't look quite as sharp. He looked like he was thinking a bit more. Like, I don't know if something had gone wrong in his training camp or something. Again, I'm not making excuses for him, but to me, I don't know, and even Marvin Hagler pointed it out. He was like, he just doesn't look as fast as he usually does. But it's funny because you look at Ray Leonard's approach against Kalule, and then you examine that and you compare it with, the approach of a lot of modern day guys, and everybody's like, oh, well, you got to throw the right hand frequently if you want to beat a southpaw. And Ray Leonard just didn't look like he really cared about much of that. Like, he was trying to pot shot him a few times with some of the right hands, but I mean, he was like working off individual punches from Kalule, and then he would throw like a left hook to the body and then a right hook to the body. I mean, he would work off Kalule's single shots and that, bang him everywhere. And he, he's throwing combinations, and you could see that there was a bit more emphasis on the left hook, which I think is a good punch against a southpaw as well, so long as you can utilize it correctly. I mean, Kasizu used to do it pretty well. But yeah, I mean, Leonard was, by and large, Leonard. Again, he didn't look as sharp to me, but, he was working behind the jab. He was juking and jiving a little bit. And Kalule, to me, looked sort of confused. Like, he didn't exactly know how to approach Ray Leonard. And then when he kind of started upping his work rate a little bit, he would like double jab and then throw a straight left to the midsection. But it just didn't seem like he was really bugging Ray Leonard that much. And he actually looked like he had a hard time finding Ray Leonard, because Leonard, say what you want, he was well-rounded. And if he didn't want to be touched, you had a hard time hitting him.
Yeah, and the thing is, from what I remember, they didn't have a huge crowd for this, and they had 125 almost empty closed-circuit television sites for this, because Baez was 14-8-2. Kalule was a good fighter, but nobody really knew who he was because he was the champion of the junior middleweights, and that's at a time when people really didn't care about that. Also, I think on the undercard was Tony Ayala Jr., can't remember who he fought. Pepino Cuevas was on there. I think he fought Jurgen Hansen, who was a ranked guy, and I think Cuevas knocked him out in like the first round. But I remember watching this on something called On TV, and it cost like $10. We watched it in the comfort of our own home, and I still remember this. I think Kalule put up a better fight than what people gave him credit for. I also don't think Leonard was really engaged here. I think this fight, and I think if they dubbed it like the Astro Wars or something stupid. And Baez never should have been in a ring with Hearns. Pepino Cuevas was old, even though he knocked Hansen out. Tony Ayala Jr., I can't remember if he fought Cheatham or Epps in this. I can't remember who he fought in this fight. But this was a fight that I don't think too many people took real seriously. Probably the most entertaining thing with this whole fight is they imported what was supposed to be a witch doctor from Uganda to help the champion in this fight. And the witch doctor, I think it was discovered, was like a Catholic with 6 children. So even the witch doctor thing was a joke. And, it was just not the greatest card I ever saw. But the good thing is this. I think it was worth $10 to watch Hearns and Cuevas knock some people out, Tony Ayala to knock somebody out, and Leonard to beat what I think with Kalule was a solid fighter. And the greatest thing about this is with the Astro Wars they got on TV, they did like an hour pre-fight show where Bob Arum had insisted that Leonard, the biggest attraction in boxing, had little chance against Kalule. And Arum said before the show, if I'm not sure, it may not be word for word, but he said, I'm not wrong on this one. He said Kalule is too big and too strong for Ray. Now, I want to remind you that about a month or two earlier, Arum had also predicted Leon Spinks would knock out Larry Holmes. Actually, he said that he would run Larry Holmes out of the ring.
Good old Bob. I mean, hey, say what you want. He's a promoter, right? I mean, he knows how to promote.
Hey, I'm looking it up. I got it right. It was Jerry Cheatham that Tony Ayala fought, and Jurgen Hansen that Pepino Cuevas fought. I still remember that night. I remember sitting in my living room watching that, and my dad would have like 15 or 20 friends over. We'd all watch the fights. And the other thing that Arum predicted, and I'm reading this off the article, I don't remember this part, but Arum predicted there would be 30,000 at the Astrodome, mainly because the Mexican-American population would come out to see its hero, Cuevas. And they didn't get near 30,000 here. And it was a disaster at the gate. They lost their ass on it. I believe NBC bought the rights to show the fights like a few weeks later. But yeah, it was an interesting evening. And if you only paid $10 for it, it's not that bad. If I'd have paid $75 for that, number one, I'd have never talked my dad into paying $75 for that. But I'd have gave it a shot. But Leonard made $2.5 million. The champion got $125,000. And the right to use the ring post and his trunks for advertising.
Dang, that's cool. Well, I mean, and that's, Leonard was a big sell, right? I mean, it makes sense, and obviously he earned it. I mean, he went out, he got Kalule out of there. The stoppage was pretty good. It was a bit confusing because I don't know if you remember, but Ray Leonard threw a combination and knocked Kalule down. And then the bell sounded not long afterwards, or it was. I don't know if they heard the bell or what, but the ref. I think that was Richard Steele who was the referee. But yeah, he waved it off. But the commentator was under the impression that the round had ended, so the fight was going to continue. But the ref was like, "No, that's it, that's all." So yeah, I mean, it was just kind of one of those stopover things. It's like we were talking about with Roberto Duran and Antonio Cervantes. They're just one of those stopover things to bigger fights. I mean, it's a good win on his resume. Far from the the Duran or Benitez or Hearn or Hagler or any of that stuff, but still, it was solid. And plus, it was a southpaw. It was probably a good learning experience for him. I know he'd taken on guys like that in the southpaw.
Was really a right-hander who had been converted to southpaw, if I remember right, though. So it wasn't like
is that right? Well, you could
lefty. And the thing I remember about Kalule, I think he was a fairly skilled guy, but Kalule, the fight before this, had went the distance, I think, with Pat Hallisey. Hallisey was a Kansas journeyman who, a few months before that, had been knocked out in 4 rounds by Tony Ayala Jr., who was like 18 years old at the time.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that is interesting. Well, and Kalule, to me, it's like I couldn't tell that he was a converted fighter, but I will say that maybe it makes some sense now in retrospect because technique-wise, he just didn't seem to be that sharp. Like he wasn't, I don't know, just from the left hands that I saw, he didn't look like he was getting a lot of good leverage on it. The right hand was pretty sharp, so I guess that makes some sense. But yeah, I don't know. He was just putting together one punch at a time and wasn't really bothering Leonard that much.
Well, I think this, though, Leonard did have trouble with southpaws because a guy that wasn't a converted southpaw that gave him some trouble was a few months before that. I think it was earlier in that year. It was on HBO, but he fought Larry Bonds. I'm pretty sure that Larry Bonds was a southpaw, and Bonds kind of moved away from Leonard, and actually Leonard had some trouble catching up to him until he actually figured it out and finished it.
Well, yeah, and honestly, I mean, I wasn't Aldama in the amateurs a southpaw too?
I think so.
And he did. Yeah, he was. Yeah, well, and the thing is about it, like whenever you're fighting a pure boxer or you're fighting a lefty, I mean, a lot of guys have trouble with those just because they don't see them all that much. I mean, pretty much everybody has trouble with lefties, especially good lefties. And it's funny because we had talked about Sugar Ray Leonard not long ago, and then I saw somebody on Facebook slandering Larry Bonds. They're like, "Who's Larry Bonds?" Well, asshole,
Larry
if you
Bonds
watch
hit 73 home runs and broke Babe Ruth's home run record.
Exactly. I mean, get with the program. I mean, I shouldn't have to explain this stuff to you. You get it.
But Ayub Kalule, I mean, he fought Davey Moore, got knocked out. I think Mike McCallum knocked him out, too, and that was before McCallum won the title. Larry Bonds was a guy that, I mean, he was a solid southpaw. He wasn't anything great, but he was a good fighter. I mean, he was ranked in the top 10, and I think legitimately at that time, the bottom of the top 10, but still legitimately. And you know what? Larry Bonds probably still kicked the shit out of Deontay Wilder.
Wonder what Larry's doing. Hopefully he's listening to this podcast. He's like, hell yeah, somebody's talking about me. He could be, dude. We could probably get tons and tons, and yeah, I mean, there are probably all sorts of guys
like Larry Bonds on to talk about that fight.
Yeah, well, I mean, and some of these guys have better stories than the champs, like the big time guys.
Well,
because
I can tell you this from looking up Larry Bonds' record here. I mean, he knocked out Bruce Finch in 1977. Rocky Mosley was a solid fighter. Babs McCarthy. I just wanted to say Babs McCarthy. He wasn't really that good. But he lost a split decision to Mosley. He fought Babs McCarthy for sometimes 3 times, and McCarthy wasn't very good. I do remember him because people thought he would be good. You don't have a lot on here, but I do know this. After he fought Ray Leonard, he fought Ronnie Shields, who was a damn good fighter. Ronnie, I think, won a portion of junior welterweight title for a while and then lost it to Billy Costello. But he lost a unanimous decision there. He really only fought 4 times after he fought Sugar Ray Leonard. And, of course, he fought Leonard at the Carrier Dome in Syracuse, New York. And actually, Carol Castellano, one of the judges in that fight, actually had the fight scored at the time of the stoppage through 9 rounds, 88-85. The other 2 had it 90-80, but it was Harold Letterman, and he's half off his rocker most of the time anyways, and Vincent Rainoni. But I think there was a reason to question why Bonds was ranked 6th. And the thing that strikes me is I think that Clint, the Sheriff Jackson out of Tennessee, was the guy that Mike Traynor, I think, wanted to fight. But for some reason, he didn't get to fight him. And Clint Jackson wasn't a great fighter, but Clint Jackson was a tough son of a bitch. If you watch him against Frank the Animal Fletcher, we had him on the Facebook page with that fight with Fletcher, one of the best fights you'll ever see. And I mean, I would have liked to have seen that. He'd have beat the hell out of Clint Jackson, but Clint Jackson wouldn't have backed down from him. So the other thing that's interesting about this fight, and this is something I'm looking up, more than 21,000 people attended the fight in Syracuse against Larry Bonds.
Wow.
So there you go.
Damn, that's a pretty good turnout. Hell, we'd be happy with that in a heavyweight title contest.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in most contests, we would be happy with that.
Oh, yeah. Hell, if Wilder was drawing that big a crowd, I think a lot of people would be happy with that. But
we'll see.
We're not doing that.
Bonds still alive. Anybody out there, if you know Larry Bonds, we'd love to have him on the show. We'll see what happens when I punch this in. Hopefully he's not dead.
What do you
I just feel bad. Let's see. Where did he go? Larry, I believe he's alive because there's a born on date, but there's not a dead on date. He was born in 1952, a dead on date. That was mean, huh? So let's find Larry Bonds. He's in Denver, Colorado. Come on, Jeremiah. It's where you live.
Is he? Is that right?
Yeah, his residence is Denver, Colorado. So it's your job to find Larry Bonds.
Oh shit. Well, yeah, I'm like, shouldn't I looked it up on Facebook. I'm like, shouldn't this dude be a friend of a friend? I mean, you would think that
Yeah,
of
but
all
he's
the hard.
also 70. A lot of 70-year-olds don't do the Facebook thing.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. In fact, I was actually I saw that. Speaking of Denver, I saw the Ring magazine had an that cool series. What is it? Was it The Best I've Faced? And they did
Yeah.
Stevie Johnson, who's from Denver, Colorado. And I looked at the bottom of the article because I wanted to see what he would say. I mean, some of them, the write up is much more interesting than the answers themselves. And unfortunately, this was one of those. I mean, I like Stevie as a fighter. Obviously, he was from Denver. Not a lot of guys from my hometown who make it big. But yeah, I mean, he had like these short answers. Not one word, but like two sentences at the max, and not a lot of description. But yeah, I noticed at the bottom of the article that it looked like there was at least two people that they had to go through to set up that interview. I'm like, Jesus, man, it's like, what are these guys doing? I mean, again, I don't know. Stevie Johnson, I guess he just got out of boxing completely, but it's like you got to go through two people to find one guy. I don't know. Maybe Larry Bonds is the same way. Maybe he just said forget boxing and just went into seclusion, and I don't know.
Yeah,
We'll see,
I've
though. We'll track him down.
Talked to guys trying to get him on before that were like that, but Marvin Johnson was one. Lee Canelito was the other. And if you don't know who Lee Canelito is, I ain't got time to explain it. But all right, guys, we're gonna go ahead and wrap the show up. You got anything else before we go, Jeremiah?
No. Hell, I think that's what I was going to talk about.
Well,
Okay. Maybe I was going to talk about the, I don't know, Fury numbers or something where they said he sold like not even 6,000 tickets. It's like, man, people are talking about the potentially the biggest fight in heavyweight history. Before all this, they were talking about how Wilder and Joshua could be the biggest heavyweight fight in history, and then Joshua's not selling that well here, and Fury's not selling that well here either. And I'm like, what? Dude, the interest in boxing is not there for these to be the biggest heavyweight in any division ever. No fight that can happen nowadays can be the biggest ever,
no.
Unless maybe we're talking about something below 126, maybe. But yeah, the interest is just not there.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap the show up. Tomorrow night, we'll have John Responti back to talk about the impact of the Rocky film series and Sylvester Stallone and whether he should have been inducted into the Hall of Fame or not. Make sure you come back and check us out there. All right, we're going to wrap it up. Make sure you go to betnow.eu, use the promo code TRUTH50 to get a 50% bonus on your first deposit up to $1,000. Also, go check out Jackie Richardson and Alex Ramos on the Retired Boxers Facebook page. And Seat Giant, promo code TGT, get you a 5% discount on all your ticket purchases. So, we're going to wrap it up. Remember, you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So, for Jeremiah Preisser, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.